afternoon, everyone, and thank you for logging in. Welcome to another webinar with the Destination Knowledge Center. Uh, Today is session 3, the concluding session of Museums of Delhi. It's a 3-part series on Delhi museums that we have done. So on session 1, we covered the 6 museums. The recording is available at the DKC website. Please do have a look if you missed uh, session 1. Session 2, we covered about 10 museums. I missed out on mentioning one. Again, the recording is available at the DKC website. It was session 2. And session 3, today's session, we are covering about 3 museums. And I can see a lot of museums at the Red Fort. The Red Fort has certainly become very interesting, isn't it, Seema? So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it, how we can possibly plan even a half day at the Red Fort with Seema. Seema needs no introduction. She has been with us ever since we started this lockdown webinars initiative. But for those of you who is probably logging in for the first time today, Seema is an art historian, cultural theorist, teacher, and a designer. She's qualified with the Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Delhi and an MA and an MPhil from the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. Seema also conducts museum visits, heritage and art walks, and craft experiences in collaboration with and for prime travel companies. Over to you, Seema.
Good afternoon, Kuntil, Madhuvanti, and all the listeners and viewers. And as always, it's such a pleasure to be back again. And, I'm very fortunate to have whatever I have learned and whatever I have actually showed to a lot of guests and visitors throughout many, many years. And to continue series on the museums. And I realized that again, I thought of telling you that, Delhi has more than 200 museums. So if I have missed the ones which are not on this list, it's not because of any too, but these are the iconic ones and also tend to be on our popular routes and for travel purposes, or they are the most informative and have the best collections. So I'm going to start today, and the list has 11, as you can see. And interestingly, counting the number of museums we've seen in the past, it's coming to about nearly 30, a little less than that. And I thought it's great, not one for a day, but if we even cover 2 a month, then we are good for the next year or so once the museums start opening. It's only your enthusiasm that's required. So I'm going to one mention, which will take you to the Red Fort. And I think, Kuntil, we could actually close my video if that will give us a better view of the whole thing.
I think you should...
Can we shut my slide?
Yeah, just you need to turn off your video. You need to turn off your video for and maybe save some bandwidth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop my video. I've done that. Yes, I've done that now. And there was a reason, because I think the clarity will be more with just this, a few of the loopholes with all this web Wi-Fi and net and everything. Okay, so let's start, and we have a long list here. And as you can see from the list itself, we have 4 museums mentioned at the Red Fort. Now, interestingly, there are more than 4 museums. So we'll start with the first slide. Next, please. Okay, we don't need my profile, but we can move on. Yeah. All right, many of you who have visited the Red Fort might have crossed this particular structure or a small building which has for many years been the Indian War Memorial Museum. It is located in what is called the Naubat Khana or the Nakar Khana, And Nakar, of course, coming from the word Nagara, which was basically the drum house. And this museum was, of course, set up years and years ago, in fact, in 1919. And so that is just the period after the First World War. And the museum, which was set here by the British, was a tribute to commemorate the soldiers who had joined the First World War in India and abroad on behalf of the British Empire. Now, interestingly, this building earlier was always used only as the drum house for in its heydays. I mean, it reverberated with music enthralling the royal Mughal dynasty and the royalty. But it was in 1918, after the war, that a book was published in Shimla. And the book mentioned that there has to be an Indian war memorial. And that's when this building, they decided that they are going to have a museum. So the first and the second floor of this museum was dedicated to a interesting collection of trophies and photographs and documents. And later on, of course, this whole museum has been shifted now to one of the barracks. But I have some pictures. If we go to the next, you can see the kind of collections. So it had about 11 categories. So they had munitions, they had recruitment documents, they had even seized flags from Imperial Germany and other parts of Europe. They have a diorama of the Battle of Panipat. And interesting, one of the best parts of this collection is the swords, the kukris, the revolvers, machine guns, and daggers, along with chest armors and gunpowder flasks. So if there is anybody who's a fan of getting more information on battles and wars and all the kind of things used during that, or even after the war, if you look at the kind of medals or the uniforms. Can we go to the next? Yes. Now here you can see a typical uniform on the left side. In fact, I have a nostalgia with this because my great-grandfather and my grandfather were both doctors in the British Army. And I've not seen my great-grandfather, but we have lots of pictures of him wearing these kind of uniforms, especially when he was posted out in Europe. But you can see a beautiful thermos flask hanging on the right side. And we have one which is an heirloom, which I still have, is a completely, felt cloth covered thermos flask, which was carried by the soldiers. On the right side, of course, some interesting old technology of a fuse telephone. So this particular museum has a very interesting collection, especially intriguing to those who like warfare or wanting to get any documentation on the war itself. And today, of course, it has been shifted. So if we go to the next one. Okay. Now this building looks beautiful. It looks colorful. I must tell you, many of you have visited the Red Fort many a times, and when you go there, you find, of course, you enter through that bazaar called the Chatta Bazaar, reaching to the Nakar Khana or the house, and then followed by the Divane Divane Khan, and a few handful of buildings, literally, because when you look toward the left, where the Britishers lived, was what was told to us. It was later that we learned how the British time actually demolished significant part of Red Fort to make room for their barracks. And that is, of course, it came generally after the vengeance of 1857. It was only after 1857 and their complete control that they actually destroyed quite a number of very, very magnificent buildings to create their barracks. Now, these barracks, of course, many of these have separate points in history. They were used by British and Indian Army personnel for a very long time. But now it is interesting that such 5 to 6 barracks have gradually been converted into museums. Now, many of you might not have seen them. In fact, a couple of them were opening only around October last year. So I suppose now when the lockdown gets over, you will get a better chance to visit them. So before I go on to telling you about the different museums which are located in the barracks, I must tell you that, of course, we have the Archaeological Survey of India, which of course has the, I would say, the reins of the collection and preservation of artifacts and antiquities for a long time. But private uh, galleries and private art organizations have actually contributed a lot recently because of the wonderful collections that they have, which are connected to curate whatever they wanted to display here. As you see here, it's written Drishya Kala by DAG in collaboration with ASI. Now, Drishya Kala, of course, is basically a permanent exhibition or a collection here of collections of the Delhi Art Gallery. The Delhi Art Gallery, of course, having it set up in Hoskas village and some extended offices in Gurgaon. The Delhi Art Gallery brags of a wonderful collection of the Bengal School and collections from the Progressive Arts Group. But apart from that, they also had a very rich collection of maps and prints, even from the company period. And I think that is why it seemed very logical to have that collection over here. Can we go to the next, please? Yeah. So you're getting a view of the interior of one of these barracks. Now here, I'm going to just tell you a little about this concept of the barracks. There were 4 to 5 barracks which have been selected out of many. And these buildings are, of course, large. So there's about a 35,000 square foot of area for each of these galleries. And there were so many aspects of our independence movement, revolts, and so many different parts till we have attained freedom, that it made a logical sense to actually divide them into these particular barracks. So one of the barracks, for instance, Barrack 1, in fact, it is completely designed for the revolt of 1857 or the struggle of mutiny. And the second barrack is actually called Yad-e Jalian, which is a reminder of the Jallianwala massacre, which of course most of you might know happens in 13th April 1919. And then there is a barrack number 3, which is completely dedicated to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and the INA. There is also another barrack, which is not B1, B2, B3 as they are called. It's called L3 or L4. No, sorry, it's called L5. There was a museum which was actually the collection of Bahadur Shah Zafar. Now, very few of you might know that, in the front, facing the Yamuna, there are 5 or 6 beautiful buildings where you have the private quarters of the king. And there was a building there which was the house of Jahan Ara, the daughter of Shah Jahan. The building was initially, of course, called the Zanana Shahi Mahal, but later on it was called Mumtaz Mahal. And this was a period of 1639 to 1648 when it was constructed. But later on, that collection was maintained by the British and later by ASI of the personal collections up to Bahadur Shah Zafar. Now that has again been moved. Imagine, this is a collection of 17th century. It requires a very different kind of control of light, control of moisture, control of temperature. They had erected another part of the barrack where this Mumtaz Mahal collections, including some of the farmans or edicts of Bahadur Shah Zafar, his clothes, some pottery, and even some astronomical instruments of that time are actually kept under a very controlled temperature to preserve the antiquity. What do you see in front of you, of course, is the connection from the Drishya Kala collection, which shows these beautiful prints. Now, during the time of the East India Company, the company painters like the Daniels, Thomas and William Daniel, or Tilly Kettle, or Charles O'Doyle, and many other draftsmen and printmakers were coming to India and actually only documenting what they saw, whether they saw a gate with an arch like Sikandra, or they saw the Buland Darwaza in Fatehpur Sikri, or they saw a mosque. All these things were not done like art or paintings. They were recorded. They were records or documentation of their travels or their discovery of new areas or locations, or their intrigue of looking at things which look exotic or Indian to them. They are all beautifully documented over here. Next, please. This particular section also has amazing portraits. India was not really doing portraits, but it was with the time of Raja Ravi Verma that we see amazing realistic portraits coming up in the royal ateliers. And Raja Ravi Verma's very intimate collection, a part of it is over here, along with some amazing artists from Mumbai who were doing a lot of portraits. Portraits were very popular with the British also. And these kind of collections have been put here. Next, please. You can see this on the left side. We see this beautiful Parsi woman done by Pithawala. Pithawala, important painter living in Bombay. And on the right side, you can see the kind of reminiscent of the past monarchy or the Maharajas of old times. And these are large, some of them are 6-footers, done with oils. And this is a wonderful display. What you're going to enjoy is that it's not only curated, it's a wonderful space usage. And you can walk through it, and there are guides here who will tell you the story. There are also commentaries running, and this is here to stay. I think this is a wonderful usage of some good space, because each of these pictures has a contribution in the story of India and the story of our freedom struggle. Next, please. What a wonderful portrait of the three giants, I would say, Sardar Patel, Mahatma Gandhi, and Jawaharlal Nehru. We anyway talked about them in the last slideshow. And it is interesting that there's the whole collection of Azadi Ke Diwane. And Azadi Ke Diwane really shows their kind of madness towards patriotism. And it doesn't only include the important people, it also includes the lesser known people who made their mark in Indian history. So there is this amazing collection. A lot of this belongs to Delhi Art Gallery, and some, of course, has been given to us by private collectors. Next, please. Okay, so, oh yes, Azadi Ke Diwane. Now, as I was telling you, this is another very interesting section. One of the very, just look, look at the way they've used typography on the wall. They've got documents, they've got certificates, they've got recordings, they've got installations. They even have multimedia exhibits over here. And what is interesting is that many of these kind of things are very intriguing. I was very intrigued by one of these beautiful little notes over here, where a British officer was complaining that Bihar, which was one of the states which used to provide with the maximum amount of grass, the grass cutters over there used to supply grass for the British cavalry, and they suddenly had stopped supplying it. And that was interesting. It was their way of showing their contribution to the struggle for freedom. And so the cavalry came to a standstill because there was no food for the horses, something like that. So there are these wonderful little tales, or there are certificates which talk about the amount of torture or oppressive practices used by the British, like massacres and firing and lathi charge. So maza ye aata hai is that you actually are able to walk through it. And I could say somewhere that if you require a comprehensive view of the the Indian struggle, or want to get a nice lesson on it, this is just the perfect place. Next, please. uh, what did they wear, the kind of spaces. Even they've got these wonderful sections which are made into a prison cell. There is a whole section which talks about Andamans. You know, we read about the term Kala Pani, and we know how the life of people who were imprisoned in Andamans was supporting the movement of the revolution abroad. And one of these particular sections has a complete kind of a 3D, very realistic kind of a tabloid done of the same. So what happens is that you get to see a lot as you walk through, and they've done it in a very realistic fashion. Just look at the treatment of the walls. It's not made glamorous. It takes you back into time. Even the text written, it's all very well documented. And whether it's prayers or the shlokas, or even the kind of slogans like Vande Matram, or they've been just put very aptly in this whole place. Next, please. Again, you're getting a beautiful view of the freedom movement. I must tell you something over here. A lot of people who are faceless, who are nameless, were also involved. We, when we pick up school books, or we read from textbooks, or see a few documentaries, we only come to know of a few. Thousands of men, women, children lost their lives at different parts. And I think what is the best over here is that they have covered a lot of these unknown stories, stories about tribals. How many stories of the tribals that do we know? How many stories of the farmers do we know? We might read about Champaran, or we might read about many such things, but do we know names? Well, here they have done quite a bit of research, and they've collected photographs, and drawings have been made, and lovely multimedia visuals and documentaries of the same. So this museum is definitely unique in its own way. Next, please. Swatantra Sangram Sangrahalaya. Again, see, the sectioning is only done so that you can see it like different chapters of storytelling. Artists were involved in creating sculptures and installations in this particular museum. And I think what is wonderful, and many of these are done in 3D, and whether it is Jhansi Kirani or Shivaji or many other great freedom fighters, we see these kind of walkthroughs. And along with that, there is some very interesting anecdotes and storytelling. Imagine, and there's music playing. So it's an amazing place. As Kuntil was saying, a half a day at Red Fort, only seeing the museums, is definitely a great time spent, and it will definitely give you a great value addition as well. Also, what is interesting is there are a lot of these kind of things which, the copy of the fake news of the New York Times of 1942, for instance. There was this fake news that came out about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's plane crash. I mean, a lot of people didn't know about that, and they actually have a copy of that newspaper. So you need time here. Please remember, it's great. Kids are going to enjoy. Olders are going to, of course, feel nostalgic and like to walk through it. But it's a very, very interesting display. The display is absolutely brilliant, and I think this is the best part of this particular section again. Next, please. Wow. So if I'm going to be able to see a whole model of any kind of event, right from maybe General Dyer's trial to, the Bhagat Singh's trial, or many such cases, Simon Go back. There are so many instances, and they have made actual rooms. The best part is that the barracks are huge, and so they had enough space to actually create these kind of theatrical sets. And I think that is what makes it very interesting. There is a proper documentary that runs behind it, a proper commentary that runs behind it, and it's actually played in different languages. So they have, one time they have it in Hindi, they have English, and you can actually change it to your own requirement, because it's very interactive as well. So I think reading in textbooks and books all the time is not so exciting as to be able to see these things properly. Like here, I just want to tell you, for those, I feel very proud. Museum studies has gone a big way. Museum management has gone a big way. It is in this museum that they realized that there could be people who are visually impaired. See, unfortunately in India, it's been at infancy. I'm not saying it's not there. Now, if you walk into museums, you'll always notice there are proper ramps. You can actually take people on wheelchair. You know, thinking of sensitively about all the needs. This is a very important thing. You know, I've had guests coming all the way from America, and they're these motorized little, vehicles which they sit on. And they have walked into National Museum or National Gallery of Modern Art. But then there were places where I couldn't take them. So this museum is very user friendly, and one of the biggest, I would say, feather in the cap of this Red Fort Museum complex is that they were able to actually collaborate with what is called the Raised Line Foundation. Raised Line Foundation incubated in the IIT Delhi, or the Indian Institute of Technology Delhi, where they created tactile reproductions. Imagine, they've created reproductions of things with a kind of a slight high relief, so that you can actually touch things. And along with that, the captions are in Braille. So if there are visitors who are visually impaired, I think that is an amazing add-on which you will find over here. Another thing, Delhi Art Gallery also said a wonderful thing, and they said, we want to make Indian art democratic. We want it to reach everybody. A museum is not only for some niche audience, and that is why here, this is a museum which is for everybody, and you get to see things from very common everyday things to some niche kind of art and drawings and paintings, all connected through a beautiful curated story. Next, please. I didn't know this for a very long time. I used to go to the Tibet House many a times, which is at the institutional area at Lodi Road. I went there because they used to have a Tibetan doctor who used to give these wonderful medicines for, diabetes and things, that age-old herbal medicines which Tibet is really known for. And there was always this room I missed for a very long time, till one day I was told by a friend, would you like to come and see some new collection of thankas? And I said, what are thankas? I don't know what this is. And of course, later on, I knew what thankas were because I was from an art school, but I did not know that they had a museum here where they had this beautiful collection of the same. So I entered in and I realized that the Tibet House has a beautiful museum. So when I entered in, there was this person sitting there, and I said, a museum in this particular, it's more a guest house for guests to come and stay here, and even His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, comes and stays here. Why do you have the museum here? He said, you know what, with times changing, we don't want the young people or the people of today to forget the beautiful traditions of the past. This little museum is a reminder of not to forget our traditions and to remain connected to our past heritage with the present values. And I thought that was a beautiful thing to say. And so you see over here, it sort of will give you a great idea of the life of Buddha, or the Bodhisattvas, the followers of Buddha, or about other kind of rare objects which came from Tibet brought here by refugees and then handed over as a part of their own cleansing to the contribution to the Tibet House. Next, please. So on the left side, you see a beautiful, creative representation of a stupa, and you can see the image of the Buddha within it. And of course, on the right, you see a tanka. Now, what is interesting is the tankas are basically recorded messages. That's what it translates to. Tankas, of course, were embroidered or painted, woven, and they were done on silk sometimes. Lovely narratives and storytelling from the life of Buddha or the other influential lamas and the deities. And these were basically not just displays of art. No, no, no. These are aids to a spiritual path to enlightenment. They are used as a element for meditation, and they are supposed to take you on that path of values and to connect you to the heritage of this beautiful faith of Buddhism and to the people of Tibet. So this particular museum has a beautiful collection of the same. So there are about 200 tankas, about 150 copper, bronze, sandalwood and stone statues, again connected mostly to their religious heritage, as most of us know. Yes, there are documents talking about the travel of the Tibetans to India, their whole setup in Dharamsala, or the donation to the Holiness the Dalai Lama from the Tibetan refugees of this little collection. So in the normal course, I don't know how many of you even would just understand it. Many of us don't even know so much about the beautiful Buddhist faith or the section of this faith that comes from Tibet. So this is a wonderful place. They have wonderful volunteers over here. They are really sweet, and they'll make you sit down with a cup of tea, and they tell you so much about the story. Small, but very interesting, right in the heart of the city. Next, please. Qutub Institutional Area, very close to in South Delhi, towards Haus Khas, and while you're moving towards Vasant Kunj, this institutional area has a small and a beautiful collection of a couple of people who spend their life studying archaeology, studying prehistoric tools, and studying Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic collections, not only from India, but also abroad. This is a wonderful museum, especially for children who've just started finding their feet into the textbook introductory chapters of the Old Stone Age or the prehistoric period, or anyone who wants to know about fossils. So it's not just a very surface kind of a place to know a few things. It has in-depth artifacts telling you in-depth knowledge of fossils from Narmada Valley to the great connections of collections coming from the Indus Valley civilization, and even many of them from other countries. It also has a beautiful collection of terracotta. Now you might say that, oh, I can see the same thing in National Museum. See, when people go for excavations or they go to places to unearth a lot of new specimens, these collections are generally done by different groups, and these groups, of course, or sometimes collections are scattered or they are distributed so that more people in different parts of the country and the world can get a good look at them. The best part about this very small museum is its beautiful labeling and its beautiful arrangement, and it is a very well organized and archived collection. On the left, of course, you can see it's actually a prototype painting of Bhimbetka, and you can see the X-ray figures that are seen when you go to see the rock paintings in Madhya Pradesh. So a wonderful collection, and they also have some fossils over there, and a wonderful collection of numismatics What is numismatics? I'm sure many of you know. It's a coin collection. And they have absolutely amazing coins, again, very beautifully displayed. Next, please. Okay, what is this? It looks weird. It looks strange. You're asking me, what is this? I don't know how many of you have ever seen this building. Many of you work in Gurgaon and Gurugram. And this is well, somebody might say it's something modern. I agree. I would rather call it contemporary. There is a difference. Modern comes really after the 70s. Contemporary is of today. Contemporary art and contemporary design. This building itself is a piece of art. And the designer of this particular building designed this in a corroded iron. He used corroded materials, corroded steel, and the facade of brick designed by a very famous designer called Ankit Bhagwat. Now, you might ask, why are we seeing this in a museum series? Well, we have wonderful thinkers and a mother-son duo by the name of Lekha and Anupam Poddar, who are known not only in the field of hospitality. They were the owners of the Devi Art Devigarh property. Well, now it's not with them. But the Devigarh property was very much part of Lekha and Anupam Poddar's collection. They're also owning advertising agencies, and they're into many things. But their first love of both mother and son is their art collection. They actually possess a collection of more than 7,000 works, contemporary, modern, and tribal artworks from across the subcontinent. And what could be better? They decided to design and set up India's first major non-profit art center. And this was called Devi Art Foundation. It is located in Gurugram, very close to the Huda Metro Center, metro station, sorry. And the Poddars, of course, are among India's leading art collectors. In fact, Lekha Poddar, she started collecting art in the 80s itself, where she traveled in different parts of the country, collecting Bengal school, then progressive artist group collections. And of course, her son Anupam Poddar, who's also a member of the Guggenheim Museum in the United States, is also now collecting great art since 2000. He supports a lot of contemporary art and also goes up to areas of Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Tibet to collect works of unknown artists, young artists who don't have a platform. I think that was the best part about Devi Foundation, showcasing works of people who will never find maybe a platform, or their work is unique, but creating a public awareness in a private initiative. And I think that is the best part about this particular 35,000 square foot of wonderful area. Of course, their main interest in generating art has been with artists like Subodh Gupta. Yes, that's you've got the great slide here. Thank you for changing. Subodh Gupta, Bharti Kher, Sudarshan Shetty, Anita Dubey, A. Balasubramaniam, Mithu Sen, and there are many, so many more names when I start with the list of contemporary artists. So let's see. I think I have a couple of slides to show you some works which were exhibited here. So let's go on to the next slide, please. And you might wonder, excuse me, are we in some village? Why are we seeing this cow dung cakes and a little house of cow dung cakes? Now, this is interesting, and maybe some other time I will definitely like to do maybe a lecture on what is contemporary art, understanding art of today, which is not only conceptual, it can be very symbolic. This is a work of the artist Subodh Gupta. If you remember, the one who uses pots and pans to create a wonderful installations. This is one of his work he had done in 2006 as part of a workshop which he was doing in Modi Nagar for a organization called Khoj. His connection and his roots go back to the village, which we all know. He always used to say that, as a child, I used to go and collect cow dung for my mother, who used it for her rituals, that is her puja. And he said, I grew up with the understanding the texture of cow dung, the smell of it, and the spirituality connected to it. And I think at this point, he was wanting to connect to his mother himself. So what he did was he created this like kind of a little hutment, and he called this work My Mother and Me, Cow Dung, Cakes and Ash. Inside, he even burnt it to give another kind of a feel to it. Today, you might just say, I'm sorry, we don't understand this. So contemporary art is not like art of the past, which is right there for you. There's a lot of reading between the lines. You need to know a lot about the artist, his personal or her personal experiences. A lot of time, there are statements about life, messages about our social system, and a lot of time they are very emotionally connected. So we see here a connection to spiritual, to ritual, and affectionately to his mother. And of course, once you were inside the room, you were completely shut off from the outside world, and that is what he was trying to show. And this is one of the earliest works I saw at Devi Art Foundation when it had its opening. Next, please. No, we are not looking at fabric, but yes, we are. There was this beautiful exhibition. If any of you are interested, you can let me know through the organization. I could send you links of this beautiful exhibition, which was actually about the rich wealth of textiles and threads and weaving, embroidery of our country. And the artist who actually makes this is actually a fashion designer, Aneeth Arora. And Aneeth Arora is very much inspired by muslin and muslin garments. And, he creates a little tent here, a house. Again, creating a space. Fabric is conceived as a dramatic architectural enclosure. And you see beautiful jalis and tent of a finite space using this kind of seamless, netted, pulled thread and lace-like effect. It ceases to be fabric. It ceases to be a piece of cloth. It ceases to be a garment. It becomes art. And this is what is a very interesting part of contemporary, where you break all those fixed canons and fixed boundaries of your mindsets and move into a world beyond it. It's not only him. Art of this kind is being done by weavers and embroiderers all over our country. Even Zardozi workers are working to a certain part to create these kind of wonderful compositions and installations. And I would be more than happy to connect you to some of these beautiful websites if any of you are interested. Next, please. One more very interesting work using bricks, creating a turmoil here. This artist only did an arrangement of, again, this was a kind of a social statement on the way our whole earth is going through a turmoil. And in our construction, it also happens, we hear of buildings breaking down, we see potholes on the road, we see a change in our land. And this was in fact very animated. As you see, you get a feeling of a movement in this kind of work. You say, "Ye to painting nahi hai. This is not a proper sculpture. A whole room has been used to create an installation." And this is all part of contemporary art. It doesn't have one particular meaning. It doesn't have one kind of set kind of a definition or a kind of manifesto. It's free from all this, and so takes more time to understand, yes, to enjoy as well. Next, please. Okay, we are at the South Court Mall in Saket. Now we go shopping to Saket, but I don't know how many of you have actually walked to the other part of DLF South Court Mall, where another very similar museum to the one at Devi Art was established by, again, an avid art collector. Many of you must have heard of Shiv Nada, but his wife Kiran Nada is an avid collector. And she started with a very modest collection, and gradually she herself said that as I learned more about art, Initially, her collection was only to decorate her house, as they were doing better in life and they could afford to invest into art. But later, her collection also included, again, the promotion of a lot of artists, making art more reachable to people. Again, opening its door in January 2010. This museum has a wonderful collection. It's a beautiful space. You will love to walk through it. So whenever you are visiting the mall, the next time you can just walk into the museum, of course, whenever it's open. And again, it is a first, again, a private museum only exhibiting modern and contemporary art. Here, of course, they give this space to artists who would like to show works. Of course, again, their highlights are the Bombay Progressive Artist Group, including people like F.N. Souza, Guy Tonde, and Hussein, just name a few. Next, please. Yes, this will look familiar. When we were doing the National Gallery of Modern Art, I showed the Tree of Life. This is beautiful. It's huge. I remember standing below it and thinking, my God, how do these ideas come into the mind of Subodh Gupta? Using everyday objects which he grew up with. There are pots and there are pans and there are spoons and there are cans and there are all sorts of steel utensils. Can you imagine 26 tons of them? How did he manage to install this? And it was funny because I asked them, I said, if he wants to take it home every evening, how is he going to do this? And we've just laughed at it. But if you look at the image itself, I think many of you will immediately understand what it's mimicking. It mimics the dismaying mushroom cloud that forms from the deployment of nuclear warfare. I think somewhere Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were the most recognizable atomic bombings, come to your mind immediately. But Subodh Gupta is much younger. And what did he go through? Or what are his recollections which made him do this? Well, he was very much aware of the Indo-Pakistan problem, especially at the time when we were at the brink of nuclear war, 1999. He made this particular installation. A thing like this made with objects is called an installation, and he calls it the LOC. You can see the mushrooming, and it suddenly makes you think differently. If it's not necessary that you have to use paints and brushes to create those beautiful effects of light and shade, just look at the beautiful highlights and the protrusions and the extensions and the depressions and the gray areas and the bright parts. So you see the light tone, middle tone, dark tone, extensions, protrusions, and you feel the dismay. You feel that whole kind of a cloud hovering over us with that kind of unsurety of our own lives. And this is at the entrance of the museum. And I think it definitely talks about contemporary thoughts and contemporary views. Art is not always pretty. Art is not always beautiful. And a museum with something of this nature is definitely worth visiting. Next, please. Oh, I'd love to talk to you about the art piece on the left bottom. You said, oh God, is it a car? Oh, no, it's a skeleton. Does the car have teeth? Okay, of course, we know when the skeleton is there, we see teeth. Is it bones? What has he made this of? Well, this is so iconic. This is the work of a contemporary artist called Jitesh Kalat. Contemporary art also means using different materials. Subodh Gupta using stainless steel pots and pans. Well, what did he use? No, he didn't use his mother's melamine plates. No, he didn't. Well, he decided to use resin over here. He made this whole structure with resin, and this contemporary artist has created a niche by again talking about some of the very important social and I would say environmental issues. Well, he said a beautiful thing. He said, The end of fossil fuel will have a devastating effect on the combustion engine, and the end will be millions of bone cars remain frozen in time, only to be discovered many years from now and placed in museums. And this was the idea he got. And in fact, he created the first one for a very, very important exhibition at the Netherlands in Hague. And this artifact is called the Bone Art Car. And it really talks about how we need to preserve and conserve things in our environment. And but you will say, oh God, this is so interesting. Should we call this art? Yes, this is contemporary art. It doesn't have to fit into canvases or made out of materials which are predictable. And you can make a social comment, environmental comment. So Kiran Nadar Museum has a lot of platforms given to these artists, creating new kinds of interesting art. And of course, again over here, if you are a novice, you don't know much about contemporary art, don't worry. There are guides there who will explain. And many a times you're lucky to meet the artist himself or herself over here. Next, please. Yes, if you enjoy photography, you know, I am a major fan of photography. I love photography. I've seen a lot of photographic museums in the world, but I didn't realize that such a wonderful, one of the best, largest museums of camera and photography was coming up right here in my neighborhood in Gurugram. And unfortunately, many of us might not have seen it. I got a chance to visit it because it opened only in October 2019. There are very few people on this earth who selflessly want to share their own collections or selflessly want to show their own stuff to people, and and make it a non-profit place so that people just enjoy. And this is the what I would say about Aditya Arya. Many of you might have heard his name. He's a giant when it comes to the world of photography. Yes, that is him. And he, of course, over here showcases photography not only as a hobby, art, science, and history. I think that is the best way. This museum is all about showcasing art, science, history of photography. He has more than 100 countries collection of antique cameras which he collected. He has photographic equipment coming down the ages, historical archiving. You can learn and experience the magic of photography here. So if any of you or your kids or anybody wants to go and see this museum with the collections, it is absolutely magnificent. And what is interesting is when you enter in, there is this large chandelier which is made only of Yashica cameras. And it is in fact Southeast Asia's largest museum. And he has collections right from 1827 to 25 till now. And from the first camera obscura, which was the world's first camera, to of course the latest DSLR, everything is here. Or from the smallest mini spy cams, which were used by people like James Bond, to cameras weighing 500 kilos, which you can see right in front of your eyes. So that is a beautiful place to visit. It has a lovely little corner where Aditya Arya will sit with you. He's generally there, loves to talk about his experiences of his times in his career or how he set up this beautiful museum. Next, please. Look at all the collections. Absolutely brilliant collections. Yes, I'm sure many of you have been here. Many of the kids love going here. I remember going here even when I was in school, and I've taken my daughter here when she was a kid. Sahib, Sindh and Sultan. Okay. Oh, no, these are not Salman Khan's film names. No. These are the names of the 3 steam locomotives which were part of the 14-carrier train, which left on 16th April 1853 from Goribandar, Bombay to Thane. Well, how do I know this? No, I didn't know it. Otherwise, I saw it only written in National Rail Museum, thanks to National Rail Museum. And for a lot of enthusiasts who decided in 1962 that India has such a wonderful history of railways, we must showcase it. Whether it is the 1880 Darjeeling Himalayan Railway or the Fairy Queen two-cylinder broad gauge, or the beautiful, Solan Kalka train, or the beautiful royal carriages. We have wonderful history. Now, when this museum was planned, can you imagine? It wasn't only planned for railways, it was planned for waterway, roadway, airways. But it didn't really work out. And finally, there was a gentleman called Mr. Michael Graham Sato. Many of you might not know his name. Born in 1916 and he died only recently in 1993. Well, recent because, I mean, still not very far away. One of the greatest enthusiasts who got together with our president, Mr. President V.V. Giri Sahab, and he was a rail enthusiast, and he said, we must start this museum with railway and we'll see. And he kept coming back from England to India, India to England. And finally, in October 7th, 1971, this museum was set up. Later, of course, expanded more in 1995. Here, of course, we have most amazing collections, real life-size collections, exhibits, locomotives, coaches, princely state carriages, and along with that, fun rides as well, which make it the added attraction. 3D virtual, interactive, engaging kind of activities as well, along with the very, very rare collections of the Patiala State Monorail and the John Morris Fire Engine. Many maps, many documents, many drawings. And I think it's a wonderful day to spend at the Locomotive Museum, the National Rail Museum in Chanakyapuri. They have a great canteen, kids enjoy, they can run, they can climb up on these. I think that's the fun of it. And it's a old time memory. I remember as a child traveling in these kind of trains, and of course now train journeys have changed. Nothing about the old time journeys. There is a lot of nostalgia. Next, please. Oh, you can see the little child there. So you can imagine it, he's feeling, oh, there's a train engine kept in my garden. And so, and there's so much of interesting information about each of them. For those who are interested to know about the cylinders and other kind of engineering marvels, they are going to really have fun over here. Next. You'll say, oh God, what is this? I couldn't, I think, end today's um, this slideshow without the mention of something which seems so insignificant and yet significant. Now that's up to you to decide what I meant. Um, yes, I was curious as when I visited the Palace of Versailles in Paris, in France. I was very intrigued when I saw the potty of King Louis XIV. It was interesting because he was on the court, in the court. He and, all the royalty was there, and they kept continuing their job while the court was in session. So the throne had to look as beautiful as his chair. So that was the potty. And it would be made in such a way that it would be concealed while they sat on it. And even if it was visible, it just looked like another sofa in the drawing room. Everything has a story. We have stories about our lifestyles, we have stories about our eating habits and our housing. So why not the toilet? It again makes you, understand your own lives and how things have come into practice. When we have kids, we buy a small potty for them. And then we see how even today you walk into stores of hardware stores, you see the way the design is. It's all about man's inventions and discoveries and this mindset taking them to designing different kinds of things with the needs of the time. So in 1992, Sulabh International designed a museum of toilets at Mahavir Enclave, which again has wonderful collections from ancient, medieval, and modern times. And in fact, Next, please, let's go to the next one. The one on the left is a prototype of Palace of Versailles. Louis XIV had toilets like this. Well, the royalty in England also, Queen Victoria had a toilet which was actually gilded with gold. So that was very, very interesting again. I hope this does not disturb you. We are nearly coming to the end. I don't know what's this noise. Next, please. These, of course, as you can see, were the ones with the covers. They were also part of the railways. In railways also, for the first class, the British officers, they loved these ones with their medallions on it, or their typical kind of symbols on it. And so this collection over here has more than 200 to 300 different kind of toilet seats and other bathroom accessories and wash basins from many countries of the world. And I think this should be the last slide. Yeah. So a visit to a museum is a search for beauty, truth, and meaning in our lives, which is right. Isn't that true? I think that's what it's. You will find so much of happiness. There's so much of interest. Everything, our own existence starts making a lot of sense when we look at these collections. Where we came from, where are we going, what are we doing today? And I think this is a legacy. Museums are legacies for us, for the younger generation. And the reason for having this quote was only, again, to persuade you. We've seen about 24, so we have at least 2 for a month. And I hope sometimes you will be able to explore many more museums around your own homes, in your cities, your country, and the world itself. So I hope you enjoyed that, and do visit museums as much as you can. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Seema, for this lovely series on museums of Delhi. It was really, really an eye opener. In fact, but the kind of variety that we have in Delhi itself, which can add so much into an itinerary, into the client's experience. We have time to take some questions. Do you have?